What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Cryptid Saturday. And today's Cryptid Saturday, we're talking about Bigfoot. So here's a little background on what this is. I just finished my series where I was going over cryptids from all 50 states. And while I was doing that, I actually kept what I was calling my Bigfoot tracker. Basically, any state that I talked about that had a Bigfoot story or legend or something that I would consider to be a Bigfoot animal, I just marked yes or no. And now that I've gotten through all 50 states, here's what I actually came to the conclusion of. We have Bigfoot in all but 7 states. And honestly, there's probably Bigfoot in those 7 states, just none that I actually went over. But what this got me honestly thinking about was, how legitimate are Bigfoot claims? Now, throughout the whole process, I could actually eliminate a lot of the sightings as to what I would account for as bears, mountain lions, or just straight up people. But that actually got me thinking and coming up with a fun theory on what I actually think Bigfoot could actually be. With Bigfoot being in so many different states, and a lot of the legends actually being a lot older than what you would consider to be modern day, it really got me thinking and made me come up, honestly, with what I consider to be the definitive answer for what Bigfoot is. Now, I don't believe Bigfoot is still around. If he is, he's in very, very small populations spread out across all of the United States, Canada, Mexico, and honestly probably other places around the world that we're going to get to eventually. However, if you look back and think about the history of the United States and where a bunch of these things would have came from, right? So more than likely what happened is this Bigfoot would have came across the Bering Land Bridge just like we did and entered the North American continent. Our ancestors did it. There's no reason why a Bigfoot type species couldn't have done that. Now, I don't believe Bigfoot is some descendant of Gigantopithecus or some other thing, but what I believe Bigfoot is actually is just another species of human. Now, there were plenty of humans that lived at the same time as Homo sapiens. Neanderthals, Denisovans, the Hobbit are just a few examples that I can think of. But here's the thing. What happened to all of them is they were essentially outcompeted or outbred or interbred with Homo sapiens. And if you look at it that way, we lived alongside all of these people, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not peacefully, actually the majority of the time not peacefully. But with there being violent encounters, what this would have done to any other species of human living alongside of us would probably have developed a culture around avoiding us. They would have built their villages in places that we weren't, and we would constantly have gone to fight with them. So now if you jump over to North America, a lot of our Native Americans here had stories of large hairy men, and they said they lived in certain areas, and the Native Americans would avoid those areas. We don't go over there because that's where the big men live, that's where the hairy men live, that's where the wild men live. Mind you, all of these are just simply interpretations of Europeans coming and talking to Native Americans, so it's some things could be lost in translation, but the idea is when we were coming through, they would say, don't go over that hill, that's where the wild men live. But of course, we wouldn't have listened to them. We would have and we didn't listen to them. We just went across the hill anyway, and what would we find when we get there? And that's sort of the crux of it. We wouldn't have found something that didn't look like us. Neanderthals looked a lot like us. Denisovans looked a lot like us as far as we can tell. Hobbits were different, but also just smaller people. And the fact that we could interbreed with them probably said they looked enough like us where we considered them to be eligible to, breed with. So as the Europeans came across, they come up to the Native Americans, we would have just, we're going across the hill anyway. And what would we get when we got to the other side of the hill or we got into the forest? We would have just found more natives. And to Europeans coming over here, all natives were savages. All savages look alike. They were just, unmodernized people, even though realistically the Native Americans had their own set of a culture and everything, and in some ways were more modern and sophisticated than the Europeans were, just in different ways. And they would have just done the same thing they did to the Native Americans on the other side of the hill or out of the woods. They would have either killed, enslaved, or bargained and traded with these other people. But I can actually take this just a step further. Most of the North American population of Native Americans was wiped out not by Europeans, but by diseases. Matter of fact, almost the entire population was wiped out by disease before Europeans even managed to contact any of them. So if you take that aspect, a lot of the other species of humans that were here probably were susceptible to all the same diseases that the Native Americans were, and they would have also been dying out. So now you already have a small population. So a lot of the Europeans, whenever they went over the hill where they were told there were going to be these wild men, probably didn't encounter anybody. They probably just chopped it up to, well, there's nobody here, because disease had already wiped that population out. So if you look at it that way, then these other species of human probably would have developed an entire culture around avoiding other humans, because they had been at war with Native Americans. They have a history of being attacked by Homo sapiens, even in Europe, and these other white men that carry these things that make loud noises and are shooting at them with their guns and things. So they would have probably developed an entire culture around simply avoiding other humans, just as a survival instinct. They would have broken up into smaller groups. They would have lived in the woods, in the deeper part of the woods, where they can be left alone for, maybe not generations, but so where they're less likely to run into Europeans, Native Americans, anybody that was going to attack them. They would develop all of these ways to avoid being seen. Maybe travel more at night, follow routes, stay in these secluded areas. And then you get these myths of settlers and Native Americans seeing these, other people, but people that are probably bigger than us, probably more physically fit than us, because they are living in nature, not in the thing. They're hunter. They're not really farming. They're hunting all their food. They're foraging. They're going to be in really good shape, and they're not going to be clean. And when the settlers would have seen these things, they would have just thought, oh my God, there's monsters in the woods. And thus you pass down these stories. And then the stories get exaggerated over the years, and you turn into these, 6 foot tall, hairy monsters that we now see as Bigfoot. And if that's the case, if any of them are still living, they would be in extremely small populations. Probably just 1 or 2 roaming around in the woods, and not just in the woods, in the deep part of the woods. And that would be why you would only see them on very rare occasions. They would be hidden very well, even hiding in plain sight, to where before you wouldn't have any way to see them, or you wouldn't even notice they were there. But now we've got these great things called video cameras, and everybody is recording. You literally have a camera, high definition, in the palm of your hand, and everybody has one. And we're filming and we're taking pictures constantly. So that is why once the invention of the camera came around, especially video camera with videography and photography and all of these things, that these sightings would have started to increase. But unfortunately, what I truly believe is that all of that ended way before modern times. I don't think Bigfoot could have realistically survived into today. There's just too many cameras. There's not enough places left for them to hide. And even if they are still around, they're probably a dying breed. And I mean that literally. They're probably so isolated from one another, so separated, and just the unfortunate happenstance of them having to live in these very secluded areas, they would build barely any tolerance to diseases and things like that, and they would just probably be on their last leg if that leg hasn't already sprung. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that my theory here, as my explanation to what Bigfoot is and could actually be, is a valid one? And if so, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And while you guys are down there, guys, also please drop comments with what you guys think Bigfoot could actually be. Also, while you're down there, guys, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you never miss another Cryptid Saturday. And I will see you guys next Saturday for Cryptid Saturdays.